Donald Trump's personal vendetta against former FBI Director James Comey just went up in flames before a shocked courtroom. Anyone who cares about Comey, the politicization of the Justice Department, or, the rule of law, take heed. This is truly jaw-dropping. Mine hit the floor, and I do this for a living. Welcome to Occupy Democrats. I'm David Reddish. The cases brought by the Trump administration against James Comey, as well as New York Attorney General Reddish, have attracted criticism from the beginning. Both were publicly targeted by Donald Trump for revenge. Comey for investigating the 2016 Trump campaign's ties to Russia, and James for prosecuting Trump's campaign finance violations. Both Comey and James currently face dubious charges, Comey for lying to Congress, and James for mortgage fraud. Legal experts have criticized both indictments as flimsy at best, as well as the appointment of phone sex chat line cosplayer Lindsay Halligan, a woman who has never prosecuted a case, as the lead prosecutor. Pick up the phone! Sorry, I'm just saying. Her resemblance to someone I saw in a 1-900 commercial is uncanny. In any case, let's see how all that's going.
We have breaking news out of Alexandria, Virginia, where former FBI Director James Comey and New York Attorney General Reddish asked a judge to drop the criminal charges brought against them by the Trump administration. So let's get right to CBS News Justice correspondent Scott MacFarlane. He is following those proceedings. He is in our nation's capital right now. Scott, any decision on throwing out those charges?
There will be a decision. That decision will come before Thanksgiving, according to the federal judge. She wants some time to process what she heard today, in part because what we heard today really has never been argued before, not with this type of defendant, not with these two types of defendants, and not in this context. Here's the bottom line. James Comey, the former FBI director, Reddish, the current New York Attorney General, both of whom are charged in the Eastern District of Virginia by the Trump administration with federal crimes, had their defense attorneys in one room in front of one judge making a parallel pair of arguments. They both want their cases dismissed. They both argue that the prosecutor appointed to their case, Lindsay Halligan, the new U.S. attorney for Virginia, who was just a couple months ago a Trump White House aide, was unlawfully appointed to the position. And because she was the only name on the case when they were filed, because she was the only prosecutor in the grand jury rooms getting those two indictments, if she's not lawfully appointed, the case collapses.
So, if you were unsold on the prosecution of Comey and James or the appointment of Halligan as a U.S. attorney, congratulations, you still have common sense. And if the case looked weak before, stick around. It's even more outrageous than we knew. Following the criticism of Halligan's appointment, even more misconduct by Halligan in the Comey case emerged, keeping jurors on the grand jury past hours, signing multiple versions of the indictment against Comey, and allowing an FBI witness to access attorney-client communications, which are protected under law as confidential. A decent attorney could probably get a mistrial based on those items alone. Then, this morning, an even bigger bomb dropped. One that doesn't just make it look like the case against Comey is weak, it looks illegal. Check this out.
A startling discussion. Less than 1 minute of time passed with no silence in this courtroom as the judge was able to ask the question and got the Justice Department to admit the final indictment that James Comey now faces, the former FBI director. It was never shown to the full grand jury in this courthouse, and they did not approve it in full. They had voted down indicting Comey because they had been asked to approve 3 different charges against him. That indictment was a no from the grand jury, and then there was no further discussion with the prosecutors to bring about the indictment Comey now faces. I want to lay this out a little bit more because I'm sure there will be many legal analysts to talk about this. The judge didn't make any final determinations about the case, and there will be more arguments about this. But what happened in court was that Judge Nachmanoff, after there were many arguments about Donald Trump directing the Justice Department, whether Lindsay Halligan, the prosecutor here, had acted on her own accord to decide to bring this indictment against Comey, Judge Nachmanoff, he began asking the prosecutor to explain why the documents in this case look the way this is, why there was missing time in the grand jury transcript. And things got very intense very quickly. They put on the husher. Both defense team and the prosecution team started whispering to each other very vigorously. And then the judge asked the question, The operative indictment in this case, that document was never shown to the entire grand jury. That is when Tyler Lemons, the prosecutor, standing next to Lindsay Halligan, the U.S. attorney who was also seated at counsel table, says, standing in front of you right now, no. There was silence in the courtroom. Judge Nachmanoff sat back in his chair. He looked down. He flipped pages that were in front of them. And then he asked again and stopped Tyler Lemons from answering, called Lindsay Halligan up to the podium. And she also confirmed, no, Your Honor, that the foreperson in open court was the person who had signed the final indictment against Comey. This was the very end of the arguments, the full set of arguments. This was like an additional thing the judge wanted to talk about. And so right after this, the defense counsel for James Comey, Michael Dreeben, he stood up and he said, it appears the operative indictment in this case was never shown to the grand jury and was never returned. That is the conclusion that they should draw, at least on the defense. He's trying to argue to the judge that this is an invalid case and should be outright dismissed. There's going to be more arguments in writing over this by today at 5. That was what the judge began to set up. But we are going to see how this plays out because this is a bit of new information that was very unexpected today and really changes the entire tenor of our understanding of this case and the fight that James Comey's team can bring to it as they try to get it tossed out of this federal courthouse.
And there it is. The grand jury never even saw the full indictment and actually voted another indictment down. And it appears Lindsay Halligan simply had the grand jury foreman sign the indictment anyway, which I'm pretty sure is illegal. This is breathtaking. I'm not a lawyer, folks, but I have to wonder if Halligan could be prosecuted herself for this kind of misconduct. The jury never saw the indictment. A grand jury didn't even charge Comey. Halligan just made it look like they did. In what universe is that legal? Mark my words, beautiful viewers. Comey will walk free in the very near future. This case is toast, and likely, so is Lindsay Halligan. It's only a matter of time before Trump and Attorney General Pam Bondi turn on her and blame her for all the mistakes here. Her career is over, and I'm loath to think of another case so flawed or prosecutorial misconduct so obvious. Certainly not since the Rosenbergs or maybe the Central Park Five. Visit Wikipedia if you don't know what I'm talking about there. Halligan is finished. On the upside, however, I bet you could find work at a 1-900 chat line. Pick up the phone! Don't tell me you don't see it. This is Occupy Democrats.